pressing question.
Did you want to ask? Nothing here. We're good.
Okay. All right. Moving along then. So this is an overview of the university model. Obviously, this is important for Watts. It's got the University of Michigan, Eastern Michigan University, and some community colleges. So we have, our zonal inputs, zonal assumptions, student residence, student enrollment, that's fed into this model. There's a university trip gen step that produces, mostly internal trips, but there's some university external trips. The university model is it's a little bit simpler than the resident model. You kind of have all the same major steps, but they're all generally just a little bit simpler than what's done on the resident side. One example of that is after we generate the trips, we use a gravity model instead of destination choice to distribute the university travel. Then there's a mode choice step, Jane will talk about. Then there's university other to other travel. And this, in a lot of ways, is similar to that non-based model on the resident side we just talked about. So it's a little bit simpler, but kind of the same kind of concepts and motivations apply. Okay, so this slide shows the kind of the campus definitions and the student home locations. So we have the University of Michigan, and we split that into two sub kind of campuses. I know in reality, people, there's a North, Central, and South campus, but to keep things simple, we split it into just a North and South piece. With the thinking that if you're traveling between, there's travel that may a lot of travel may stay within either this North piece or the South piece, but then kind of if you're traveling between the North and South, the modes you might use are a lot different than if you were to stay within, either section. There's a few community colleges and Eastern Michigan University as well. So on the right, it's dot density of student home locations. For University of Michigan, Eastern Michigan University, we had some data on student residence, where the students live. But it wasn't,
pretty specific.
Wouldn't get you kind of the full, set of students on campus. I think it was
real data
viewed more as a partial sample, if I'm remembering correctly. Like there'd be some gaps in the data. But anyway, so we'd use that in conjunction with census data, to weight up that sample, to kind of get the number of, internal students in the internal zones corresponding
so some of them are
each of
probably
the
like some
campuses.
geographic center of
So you use census data to expand the Michigan and Eastern Michigan University samples we had, and also use the residual census data to kind of coarsely infer where the students attending community colleges might live. And so students are aligned with the university. So if you're a University of Michigan student, then downstream, you're going to be heading towards that campus. You're not going to be heading to one of the other campuses, at least unless it's like a home-based other trip. Um, so in some ways, you could think of there being like three separate university models. One for University of Michigan, one for community colleges, and one for Eastern Michigan University. So this slide shows the university purpose definitions.
That is a helpful little map.
And these, I should give credit to Vince here. He originally, came up with these definitions. It's actually on a model we did, I think, a year or two ago for Charlottesville, Virginia, the University of Virginia. But really trying to get away from the traditional, home-based university purpose, and develop a kind of a richer set of trip purposes that could kind of explain all the various types of trips that university students are making, so we could ensure that you're getting those trips around the campus. The campus is kind of a key focal point in our approach. And so the trip purposes are oriented in a way such that
Okay, but not really.
we can kind of clearly keep track of how much travel is happening back and forth, like near the campus, going to the campus, within the campus, across the campus. But also we have a few trip purposes to kind of consider university travel that's kind of peripheral to the campus. But in this, you're leveraging these purposes. We can kind of look at all these different kind of aspects of student travel that might be hard to capture in a precise way using the traditional home-based university purpose. So anyway, so there are
Even trip to
kind of
external
three
seems kind of high.
types of
8%?
locations. There's a home that's an
UX?
off-campus student home.
Or is that just a
Someone's
representation of counts?
living off campus.
That's the survey. That's the
There's
survey.
the campus.
That seems like a lot.
That's any location on a campus, whether it's a dorm, classroom, coffee shop,
External to
so
university
forth.
or external to the
Then
family?
there's
External
any
to-
other location that's neither on campus or neither someone's home. That's the other location. So then we define these set of purposes. We have a intra-campus purpose, which is UCC, and that's travel within campus.
Do you know what the numbers
There's
look
an
like for
inter-campus purpose
this one? Between north and
that's
south?
only relevant for the University of Michigan travel, and that's a trip between the northern and southern campuses.
Or is it- are there a lot of trips,
There's
and what do they look like?
Yeah, we scaled them to
a
that.
campus to other purpose.
We
So if you live on campus, you
some of
leave
the,
it, or you're attending class, and then
data from
you
the
leave it and go
study.
elsewhere.
That's what they're.
There's campus to other.
In the past.
There's a home to campus for people who live off campus,
So using some of the data from
a
that
home
make
to
sure
other,
on,
and an other to other purpose, UOO,
yeah,
and
it's
this
been
is
like
like the non-home based trip purpose and the resident model. Then there's an external purpose, and then finally this appears in the visitor model, but there's also a visitor to campus purpose, UBX. There's market segments for on-campus, off-campus, and part-time students. So the data came from the university students in the MI Travel Counts 3 survey. There were among those students there were 834 self-identified university students in the Watts area that made a 334 trip
I don't know if there's a
records
question
for
on that. I know there's
those
questions about
university
like
students.
purpose. Like, what are
This
you
is
doing?
no K sample size, but it's certainly not great. And if you were to do full-fledged student travel survey, then obviously you may want to incorporate that data into the model. For example, for the University of Virginia, we did have a student travel survey. That was, I think we had over 20,000 trips in that survey. So kind of our first pass at this approach was using those data. So we developed the framework and kind of established assumptions for student university travel behavior. That we didn't, for the most part, we didn't directly use in Watts, but at least have something to compare against to do some reasonableness checks. And we also had some AirSage data. You can only look at auto travel, but it does give an indication of trips to and auto trips to and from the campus zones. But that there will be some work trips, like university employees mixed in there as well. So it's not entirely, but there is some AirSage data to refer to for auto travel between zones. So here are university generation results. So we estimated trip rates by purpose for on-campus, off-campus, and part-time students. So if you're living on campus, then by definition, there are no UHC and UHO trips. Those only apply to folks who live off campus. So they're making a lot of campus to campus trips and making some campus to other trips. Off campus students, you observe a good bit of home to campus and some home to other trips. Part-time students, there's going to be a lot more home to other trips, because they might be working. There isn't a work purpose for them, but the UHO would kind of encapsulate any work trips they might be making on days they're not attending class.
So you see with this,
and so
external trips
to
are
kind
all
of
down,
get the
off-campus and
aggregate number
part-time
of student
students
trips,
and
we
not
rely on trip rates, but then we need to allocate out the trip production attraction locations, the zones, and there are a series of regression models for doing that, and variables such as enrollment, employment, the number of students living in a zone, number of activities in the zone would get more trip ends. For example, for the university campus to campus purpose, a zone that has a lot of enrollment, it's going to be allocated more of those UCC trip ends than a zone that otherwise, all else being equal, doesn't have a lot of enrollment. So in this way we can feel good about kind of the global quantity of university student travel because we're relying on these simple trip rate models. But we're also, we're doing
RSG asks when
something
they can expect payment.
reasonable to then,
It's fine. It's their
allocate
finance people, so it's somewhat
out
disconnected.
the
but
trips, the zones.
when the project is done.
So this is showing the gravity models. So the results, a few things to note here. I mean, the results don't immediately look as clean as the resident, trip length frequency distributions.
Yeah.
This is for a few reasons. One is here we're using simple gravity models, whereas for the resident models, we destination choice models, which have more variables and can get a better fit. The other, and also the survey data itself. Keeping in mind that the sample size is a little bit limited. The survey data, can be a little lumpy, so you probably wouldn't, actually expect to see that the two curves agree 100%. Because the survey sample size, isn't terrific. But we do see that, by and large, the model and survey trip length distributions, agree reasonably well, keeping in mind all the caveats I just mentioned. So we would talk about mode choice here, but Dean will be doing that later today. So now we have the university other to other model. And this is similar to the non-home based model on the resident side. So kind of the traction end of those university campus other and university home other trips is going to predict where the university other trips happen. So here, we had to, because of the sample size, the data is getting a little bit thin at this point. We had to kind of group, some of the variables together. So in some of the models, we combine, it's like the university campus to other and home to other trip ends together. So that's why they have the same coefficient. For you see that they have 0.122 for predicting the SOB trips. Both models. That's because they were grouped together to help get a better sample size and more robust results. But in general, we did what we could to get a reasonable model that takes the results of the campus to other and home to other, and from that predicts university to other trips by mode. Then we also, again, fit a gravity model, to the generation results shown at the bottom of the slide. And, these, again, considering some of the caveats, the results, model and survey results,
right?
generally agree, reasonably well. It's not perfect, but they agree reasonably well. Okay, so this brings